Hello and welcome. I'm Uday Pratap Singh. You're joining us on NewsX. Let's get started with breaking news coming in this hour. A tragic incident of stabbing at Chakarpur school. A 14-year-old student has lost his life in a stabbing incident outside the Rajkiya Sarvodaya Bal Vidyalaya in Chakarpur, Delhi on January 3rd, 2025. The incident occurred during the dispersal of students after extra classes. According to the inquiry, a dispute between two students escalated into violence. The student was attacked outside the school gate where one of the assailants stabbed him in the right thigh. Simran Babbar is joining us for more on this story. Simran, what has transpired in Chakarpur in Delhi?
Where a scuffle between two school children has ended into killing one 14-year-old student who was stabbed to death outside the government school. This incident pertains to the East Delhi area, where in fact it has come to the fore as per the statement that has been confirmed by the DCP of the East, that a 14-year-old student, Ishu Gupta, he was killed in the student stabbing incident outside the Rajkiya Sarvodaya Bal Vidyalaya in Chakarpur, and it occurred during the dispersal of students after the extra class. As per the inquiry, the dispute happened, in fact, after...
I think I'll come back to you, Simran, later. I think I'll come back to you later because we're having some technical trouble there. Thank you. Let's move on now. China has released a statement downplaying the current viral outbreak and promising safe travel within the country. Meanwhile, India too has said they are monitoring the situation but have assured that there is no threat as of now. Although the origin of the HPMV virus is slated to be in 2021, the videos from China have caused some worry on social media. Let's listen into these videos that have come in.
所有的儿科床位，你是门诊的、急诊的、留观的床位全部爆满，包括急诊每天至少要接1500到2000个小患儿。现在就是腺病毒高发，然后有各种病毒出现，各种病毒支原体肺炎、腺病毒、EB 病毒、高烧病毒，并且合并感染的孩子太多了，几乎没有几个孩子是单。
说流感来了啊，这一点呢我们不能否认。急诊呢现在是爆满状态啊，挂块、发热、酸痛的、流涕的、咽痛的都是人，包括儿科也是一样的。刚才呢有个病人比喻说，人比死人参还要对。那么在这个季节，我们要注意好个身的防护工作，戴好口罩啊，保持好个人之间的距离，同时要勤洗手、多喝水，增强自己的体质。
Although China has dismissed any threat, there has been a surprising rise in infections in Wuhan, which have been documented on social media and in the statistics released on the Wuhan City Health Protection sites as well. Let's in fact quickly take you through these graphs that have emerged as well, which tell you about this spike, of course, which has happened in Wuhan. So this is the flu index of the Meituan group in Wuhan. And you can clearly see, of course, in this graph, there's a rise in infections. In fact, that's been reported there. Obviously, it stands at about 2,148,370 as of now. In December, there were, in fact, on December 22nd, there were less than 750,000 cases, but cut to the 2nd of January, and you suddenly have over 2 million cases. That's a 529% surge. That's obviously reflective in this graph. That's suddenly gone very, very up. And of course, if we talk about now the influenza A index as well, well, that also has seen about a rise of 406,030 case count as of now. And of course, it's a graph which has risen. December 10th, those cases were below 125,000. Now, suddenly on the 22nd of December, you have a situation where there are 406,030 cases. That's a 252% surge there as well. So obviously very, very concerning, these developments, although once again there's lack of transparency by the Chinese when it comes to the situation. Joining us live to discuss this further is Padma Shri Dr. Sanjeev Bagai, Chairman Nephron Clinic. We also have Dr. PSV Rao, Consultant Surgeon, Manipal Hospital, Hebbal, Bengaluru, joining us as well. Sumit Peer, political commentator, is live with us. Professor Madhav Nalapa, Territorial Director of the Sunday Guardian, also joins the broadcast live. Dr. Bagai, let me begin with you first. What do you make of these statistics, these graphs coming out of Wuhan, which has been epicenter of COVID earlier too? Should we be concerned?
Good evening, everyone. So the first thing is, with regards to China, the horror stories are always predictable. The data which is coming out is always going to have question marks because that's the track record of deceit, lying, cover up, camouflage, and not sharing adequate information. We've learned that through hard times during COVID and even before that. But coming to this particular virus itself, it's called as metapneumovirus. It's MVP. It comes from birds. It has a transient host in certain domestic and environmental animals. And then it enters into human beings through close contacts, coughing, sneezing, touching, fomites, through surfaces and so. Generally, it's a mild disease. So the first point which I need to highlight is there should be no panic. There should be no anxiety. There should be no stress. Most of the time, almost 80-90% of human beings are exposed to this virus during natural infections which are subclinical before the age of 5. The worrying part of this particular infection is that it hits the children generally in the age group of 3 to 6 months. That's in the first part of your first half of your life. Most of the time it's subclinical, but some kids, especially who are immunocompromised, who have history of wheezing or asthma or lung disease, generally then land up with what we call as bronchiolitis, wheezing, respiratory distress, and indeed pneumonia. The virus can attach onto the respiratory tract. This is a little different from the influenza and the RSV, respiratory syncytial virus, a little bit more quickly, and it's more invasive than the other viruses. But yet again, it is mild. Unfortunately, at the present moment, we don't have any vaccine for it, and there is no treatment which has been approved worldwide for it. What we should do are 2 points. One is, again, stress on personal hygiene. In the peak of winters, when we see respiratory infections, especially in children, masking. We know that this is transmitted through microaerosol. The microaerosols can remain suspended in a given closed environment, closed clusters, without ventilation for almost up to 9 hours. It can travel from 6 to 60 feet from one room to another room. So masking is important. And as far as respiratory infections are concerned, my request to the Indian government would be there should be an approved respiratory panel of investigation. Even amongst the medical professionals, there is a lack of knowledge as to what tests to get done for wheezing, bronchiolitis, respiratory cold coughs. Most of the time, we term it as viral. It's like a blanket umbrella diagnosis. But I think the common viruses like influenza, respiratory syncytial virus, this indeed, what we call as MVP, COVID itself, it's still there, adeno, echo virus, so on, should have a common, unique respiratory panel. It should be cheap, it should be cost effective, and the diagnosis should be rapid. That means within the same day. But screen the patients, especially of international travel, check for travel in the last 3 to 4 weeks, as far as this virus is concerned, from China and other countries which are infected with it. Although the incubation period is only 2 to 6 days, it's a short incubation period. It's transient. The symptoms go away within 5 to 7 days. It doesn't have any long-lasting impact. So the bottom line is there should be no panic, simple precautions, hand hygiene, masking, and keep a good watch out for respiratory symptoms, from especially in smaller children. Over to you.
Okay, let me in fact quickly also bring in now for his perspective Dr. PSV Rao. Dr. PSV Rao, what do you make of these developments that are occurring in China? How recent is this spike? What do we know about this virus, and should the world be concerned?
Good evening, all of you and all viewers. See, the problem here is that every winter in the northern hemisphere there are outbreaks of influenza and these respiratory infections, but for some reason it is much more in China. And we even before the COVID, the SARS epidemic and an influenza epidemic all started in December in China, and then it spread during the Chinese New Year. This is Chinese government has always been very opaque about the figures involved, and we can't trust them if they're even if they're identifying the virus as HPMV or something else, because in the past they have tried to hide the seriousness of the situation during the SARS and the COVID pandemics. So if it is the HPMV virus, then Dr. Sanjeev Bhagai has already talked about it. I don't want to repeat that. But If it is some new variant of a coronavirus or a new variant of an influenza virus, or some other such respiratory virus, then we will know only when it spreads after the Chinese New Year. So we should take all the precautions. And even in India, during the winters, there is increased incidence of flu, which is a common word used. And hence, we should take the necessary precautions. One of masking, second, avoiding crowded spaces, and third, the hygiene, taking hygienic precautions. Now, I fully support what Dr. Bagai said about having a panel of tests to specifically identify and classify these viral airborne infections rather than classifying all of them as flu, so that we know which are more contagious, which are more likely to cause a spread and cause a serious problems, especially of pneumonia and increased asthma problems in the elderly. And the other point I want to make is that this, from what we can make out from the videos emanating from China, most of the problem seems to be with children. And this virus is more common, like Dr. Bagai said, among the infants. But those who are below 5 are more prone to these infections. And so we have to be more careful. And the children here, do remember that all children who are below 5 were not around during the pandemic and may not have any immunity or exposure to any of these viruses. So they are more at risk. And it would be nice if the Chinese authorities would be far more open. And as of now, we have very little trust in what they will reveal and what they will suppress. Thank you.
Ji. Okay, stay with us. Stay with us. In fact, let me also quickly turn now to Sumit Peer, who's also live with us. Sumit, now as far as, of course, this latest development is concerned, how, eerily similar is it to what happened with COVID-19 as well? Is it a deja vu moment where first there were denials, then the reports started coming, then the spike happened, and then we saw what happened, after that? What do you make of this, happening in Wuhan now with this spike being reported? We still don't know what kind of virus it is. Also, journalists now beginning to report on it. Some of the videos, though, emerging, we are told that it's from a while back, so there's nothing to be concerned about. What is the World Health Organization doing or saying is again another big question, Sumit. What do you make of these parallels, unfortunately, to what happened in 2020?
Uday, thank you very much for having me on your show. It's a very important show today. And, whenever you are on a TV show, you want to say something which is proven to be right. That is what every, panelist wants. But today, I want to say what I believe or what I think is happening. I pray to God what I'm thinking and what I'm believing is wrong. I want to be proven wrong. I have no problems in that, because what I'm going to reveal to you is around 10 points, and there is where the concern needs to be. First of all, if you look at the numbers are going at an alarming rate. That talks about something. There is no smoke without fire. If you compare with last year and last year and last year, it doesn't happen. Point number 2, it is specifically happening in North China, and they are covering all the numbers like COVID. They are covering all the videos. They are gagging social media. Exactly a COVID-like situation where we're told sab theek hai, then eventually we lost millions of lives world over because of Chinese negligence. Then there's a notorious lab in Wuhan which leaked it. And the world's economy had to pay a brunt of $20 trillion, 20% of the global GDP. That's point number 2. Point number 3, if you look at the current scheme of things, what is happening, we exactly see a similar pattern repeating. Now you will come and tell me the foreign minister, the spokesperson of Chinese foreign ministry said there's nothing to worry. But in a country where defense ministers, 3 defense ministers get changed in 6 months, what is the awqat or what is the stature of a foreign ministry spokesperson who can tomorrow just disappear? What happened to those doctors who reported the virus earlier? They all disappeared. Even this lady can disappear tomorrow and nowhere to be seen and found aware again. So whatever China says and says, nothing is to be believed. Now there is one important aspect, Uday. Why do all, if you look at COVID and if you look at this HPMV, why do all the viruses come from China? क्या बात है भाई, China में ऐसा क्या है? Point number 5. Why do they come when Trump is in power or is going to be in power? Last time when Trump was in power, he lost the election because it was believed that you could not manage the COVID, and that's why you lost the election. And what did the Democrats do? Nothing. Another one similarity. Point number 7. Joe Biden ordered an investigation in so-called Wuhan leak. Now, as per Washington Post, which is their newspaper, I'm quoting them, they said the report came in and it was गायब कर दिया उसको. The part which went to Joe Biden, involvement of China and Wuhan was taken out. I'm quoting Washington Post here. It's not my analysis. So in a country like America, where the president orders an investigation by the intelligence, and when report reaches him, that part of China is taken out. Who did it? What are the vested interests? Americans under Democrats funded gain of function research. That's a reality. Has gain of function research ended in China? No, it's still happening. Point number 9, is it untrue to say that today we don't know what is the strain of this virus? HPMV was discovered 20 years back by a Dutch scientist. And Dr. Bagai rightly said there is no vaccine for it. The fatality is not high. But if it is the HMPV, what we know, what if it's a new vaccine? Because in the time of COVID, the normal COVID series vaccines, viruses were easily curable. There was no problem. But this new strain, which was genetically modified, and this new strain caused all the ruckus. So how do we know the HMPV, what we are talking? Is it the traditional HMPV? Yeah, kuch lab mein modify kiya, something which has been modified with a lab with a spike protein. We don't know that. So unless and until we are 101% sure of the strain, we cannot say. And let me remind you, Uday, in 2019, at the time of COVID, Trump got enforced PCAOB Act, which got around 3,000 Chinese companies delisted from all American exchanges, and it was the biggest blow to the Chinese economy. And as a repercussion to that, they unleashed the virus. I will be very direct and candid on that. They unleashed the virus which was brewed in the lab. Now, what is Trump talking about? There's a 25% tariff on Mexico. There's a 25% tariff on Canada, but 10% on China. Because when I go deep into it, because at the time of Obama, China was having most favored nation. The tariff of any imports into US was 2.25%. Trump brought it to around 26% in his tenure. Now, there is something called PTNR. That PTNR is an equation in America that you have normal trade relations with the person. It is believed, Trump has spoken that he will revoke PTNR of China. What does that mean? Chinese goods will have 60% additional tariff. The American market is gone for Chinese goods, and the impact to Chinese exports is around $600 billion to $1 trillion. $600 billion to $1 trillion US dollars. That means the exports are down the drain. And exactly before Trump is coming to the office, they are unleashing another virus. With this virus brewing, and with America having lost maximum lives in the pandemic last time, 2 million lives. I mean, with the population, you lost 2 million lives. So these are bioterror games which are played by China to keep the world at bay. The moment you start acting CCP, the moment you go against their representatives, you go against their leaders. And let's not forget who's the new Secretary of State of Trump. He's a person who is banned from entering United States of America. Rubio cannot enter China. Rubio cannot enter China. That is his new Secretary of State of Trump. With all these things happening, when all these biolabs still going on, and remember, the Wuhan lab was PLA funded. The Batwoman and the head of the PLA lab was ex-CCP, was ex-PLA. Now, if a new virus is being let go loose, and exactly we are just before the Chinese New Year, they will keep on denying, kuch nahi hua. Suddenly, Wuhan is the most connected city of China to the whole world. Chinese New Year is around the corner. What will happen before we know what has happened? We are all gone. And if the strain is different, I was reading somewhere, I'm not a doctor, but I was reading somewhere, if strain is different, the mortality rate can be very, very high, and it is impacting our new generation, children and the elderly. So what are we supposed to do? Sit back and think that Chinese are telling us the truth? No, they are lying to us. They are lying to the whole world. The moment you try to break the Chinese economy, the moment you try to restrain Chinese, they will unleash bioterror on the world. I have given you 10 points in a sequence. Tell me which out of them is wrong. I have given the references, I have given you the data, I have given you the collaterals. And even if you look at the countries nearby, Japan in a week reported 5,000 cases. You know how many cases of this infection are now in Japan? 710,000 cases, which is unseen in Japan for last 20 years. And it is not only, sir, HMPV. It is influenza A, it is mycoplasma pneumonia, and it is COVID-19. They are all on rampage in China. I exactly don't know what happens. And now Dr. Bagai made a very compelling point, which I compliment him. He says it comes from birds to humans. One of your shows on NewsX didn't tell you in China, all kind of exotic birds are bred for meat and eggs. One of the such bird is a quail. Quail is a chota sa pakshi hai. It is never to be domesticated. It's, and it lays 300 eggs in a year. Now you have 1.4 billion quails, more than the population of China, which are being bred in China for eggs. Now, if you are going and breeding those kimono dragons, squids, quails, ostriches, those big mouses for meat, now there are then diseases which will move from animal kingdom to human kingdom because of this contact, and these animals which were never supposed to be domesticated for meat or eggs are being domesticated in China. So whatever, now last time they told you it's the Wuhan market. Now this time, this is these quails or some other ostriches which are being bred. There's a village in China, Udayji. They have 30 मतलब 30 लाख सांप पालते हैं उसमें. They have 3 million snakes which have been bred for skin and venom in one village. These kind of all exotic things, any animal in the world, any species in the world which is banned and cannot be touched anywhere in the world is bred in China for meat and eggs or what, or leather or whatever. Now with these kind of contacts happening, if the new virus comes from China, where is the surprise? If a new form of strain has emerged from China, where is the surprise? I have been talking this on NewsX and other YouTube channels and others,
Right,
and other channels for a long time. Bataiye, what is the surprise here?
okay. Professor Madhav Narapat, let me quickly bring you in here on what you make of this situation emerging in China. How concerning should this be for the world? What do you believe is likely to happen now in the next 4 to 6 weeks there with this health emergency, that is happening domestically within China, and there is lack of transparency as always?
Well, the fact is the world needs to prepare this time around for avoiding a repeat of the panic and what happened during COVID, when a large part of the world was shut down and industrial output, economic output suffered very, very badly. So I would like to say that we have to avoid panic. I think Dr. Bagai is completely right, and Dr. Rao is also completely right. Doctors are quite right. Having said that, I want to say that I'm sure that the lessons have been learned from COVID and the pandemic and the responses, and I'm sure those lessons will be carried out. As far as this particular virus is concerned, well, it's already spread. I'm told in 2 counties in England, for example, all the poultry has been killed off by what they call bird flu. All the poultry, without almost every single bird has been killed by this particular disease. So it's already spread, frankly, to birds in the UK, and is probably spreading to other countries as well. I think we have to be very careful regarding travel protocols. And yes, we have to prepare a quick test quickly, and we have to make sure that there is a proper sanitary measures. All that is absolutely right. Avoid panic and avoid a situation in which the entire economy gets shut down, because I think that is what China wants. The Chinese economy is slowing down. This has come as a great excuse for Xi Jinping. Oh, the economy is slowing down because of influenza. The fact is, when they catch a cold, they want the world to get flu. So when they slow down, and in my view, the growth in China is less than 1.5%. It's not 4.8% as claimed. It's less than 1.5% according to the calculations that have been made. And they would therefore like the world growth to be below zero, for a simple reason that much of the world has stopped buying from China. And China is ceasing to be the manufacturing magnet of the world. So I quite agree with Dr. Bagai, with Sumit, and with Dr. Rao, that we have to be on our guard, because India is on the front line in this new battle that's emerging between the democracies and the autocracies. And by biological warfare, well, the entire Wuhan laboratory, let's be honest, is controlled by the PLA. It's not controlled by the health ministry. It's not controlled by civilian doctors. It's basically controlled by military doctors. Every single doctor working there is cleared by the military, and most of them are enlisted in the military. So it's basically a military laboratory for bioweapons. And the point is, what has happened, the cover-up of the COVID-19 pandemic, the cover-up of the origins. I think one of the priorities of the new Trump administration will have to be uncovering the cover-up and including those in the United States who connived with this cover-up, because American taxpayer money was used to fund some of the research that ultimately hit the American people. Uday.
All right. My thanks to all of our guests for joining us